Hey there, welcome to Mike's Collection, episode 351. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is a couple of new Kaiju figures I have. Both of them are from a small company called Titanic Creations. Now, I was not super familiar with Titanic Creations all that long ago. They've been around for a few years. I'm not sure how long exactly. My understanding is that it's a one-man operation. Um, and what he was making his own original kaiju characters, and I don't think the figures were very articulated. So he was selling some of these original creations, kind of Godzilla-like monsters, and he'd been doing that for a little while. But I believe it was just last year, in 2024, that he took a stab at acquiring the licenses to do some actual kaijus, some stuff that, not his original creations, but stuff from actual kaiju movies. And things like Godzilla and King Kong and Pacific Rim, those things are already covered by, the big companies. So he went after some obscure little properties that not too many other people were seeking out. So he first did a Kickstarter or a crowdfund. I don't think it wasn't actually through Kickstarter, but a crowdfund to do a character called Gorgo. Now, if I knew he was doing this, I would have bought it, but I didn't hear about it until after the campaign was over. Because basically, Gorgo is a bipedal lizard, very Godzilla-like creature, and he starred in a movie that I believe was made in the UK in the 1960s, and it had so the creature looked like Godzilla, but the plot of the movie was a little bit more like King Kong. Anyway, I didn't see Gorgo as a kid or anything like that. I actually only saw it after this figure came out. It was you can watch the whole movie on YouTube, and it's good. It's like some of the Godzilla movies I think are kind of bad, but I just enjoy them anyway, even in their badness. But I actually thought Gorgo was good. It was better than a lot of Godzilla movies. So yeah, I would check it out if you want to go on YouTube and watch Gorgo. Anyway, so the Gorgo campaign, it worked like a Kickstarter that, he needed X amount of people to commit to buying this thing before he could go through the trouble of, investing the money to produce it. But as he got more and more backers that surpassed the original number, he started adding kind of little extra bonuses into the packaging so that by the time the figure came out, it came in a big box with all these accessories. I think Big Ben was like the clock was kind of the big signature piece, and then there was maybe some extra little accessories there as well. So yeah, that would have been cool. I would have loved to have an accessory of Big Ben to go along with my Gorgo, but I missed out on that, unfortunately. Anyway, since he had gone through the trouble of molding this figure, of course he's going to take another shot at it, so he opted to re-release Gorgo, except this time he released him in his comic book colors. And I was actually familiar with the comic book Gorgo before I was familiar with the movie Gorgo. Like, I got some of the Gorgo comic books, so I knew it was based on a movie, but I never bothered to go seek out the movie. But I did enjoy the comic books. They were a lot of them were drawn and maybe written by Steve Ditko, the guy that co-created Spider-Man. So yeah, they were fun. I enjoyed them. And Gorgo is actually a little creature, and his mother is a bigger version named Agra. So when you bought the toy from Titanic Creations, you actually got a good-sized kaiju figure, which was actually Agra, and then you got a little version of Gorgo. So anyway, when he released the comic book colors, so this was a brighter green, where the original version was kind of a darker, a little bit more realistic, like if you found an actual lizard, out in the woods somewhere, it might look like this. But this is a much brighter, cartoonier green, and I did get that figure. So this is Agra, the mother, and here's the little Gorgo as well. So this set was pretty cool. I can't remember exactly what I paid for it. I think it was maybe in the ballpark of about $60 American, but that works out to maybe about $85 Canadian where I am. And when I got this figure, I was a little disappointed in the size of it. I thought it was going to be a bit bigger, but I was impressed with the articulation and the sculpting and the paint and everything. I think these are actually really fun figures, and I'm not disappointed at all. The price point, sure, I wish it was a little bit less, but I think this is a pretty great figure, especially from such a single, a small operation with just one guy operating it. So I previously reviewed this figure when I got it last year. Now, as cool as it is, and compared to the other previously released version, I actually do like this one better. I like the comic book colors because that's what I associate with Gorgo more so than the movie look. And it's just a little brighter. It's a little more fun looking when it stands on the shelf. So I am happy I got this one. However, this one came in a relatively small box because it didn't come with any of the bonuses from the crowdfund campaign. So no Big Ben, no extra little tanks or whatever else it came with. So that was kind of a bummer. But anyway, I was happy with my Gorgo, and I'm going to show you this figure closer up in a minute when we do some comparisons. But anyway, this year, or I guess last year, 2024, after the release of the successful campaign for Gorgo, then Titanic Creations acquired another license. And this was for another actual kaiju film, which I was not familiar with. This film was called Yongary, or Yongary. I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce it, but it is a film from South Korea. Also, maybe 60s, 70s. But yeah, it's about another bipedal Godzilla-like lizard creature. This guy, except he has a laser that can shoot out of his, he's got a little horn, like a unicorn or a rhinoceros, I guess, on his nose, and it shoots a laser beam. I have not seen the movie Yongary. I tried to find a copy. It's not on any of the streaming services that I could find. And even on YouTube, I found some clips of it. So I was able to watch kind of the climax when Yongary is tearing through the city and he's knocking buildings over. And one thing that surprised me was the body count. Yongary was pretty, he stomped on a lot of people. He knocked over a lot of buildings. And it seemed like it would have been a fun movie. So I hope I can see the whole thing someday. But when he put up that he was going to start doing pre-orders for a new Yongary figure, I was like, even though I don't know this character, I want to familiarize myself, which is why I sought out the movie or the scenes of the movie. And I did enjoy it. And I thought, well, it's a cool design anyway. So I went ahead and I got in on the crowdfund, but this time I was in on the ground floor. So I got in, and even though he was adding new bonuses and little extra gifts to the set, I was able to get all of it. Now, here is the box. And to my surprise, it was pretty big. So yeah, you can see the size of this box. So yeah, when it showed up, I was pretty impressed. Now, I'll put in an insert of the box, because this one here, I've opened it up. So you can see there's no toy inside of there anymore. I've taken it all out. But the box is really nice. It's got this original artwork on the front, and I'm not somebody that usually keeps my boxes, but I think I might have to hold on to this one, or at the very least slice off the front of it and keep the artwork, because this is some really nice artwork by an artist named Matt Frank, who actually draws a lot of the official Godzilla comic books for IDW comic books. In fact, when IDW first launched their new Godzilla comic books, geez, I don't know how many years ago that was, probably 15 years, they had a special where retailers could order a special cover that would show Godzilla's foot stomping on their comic book shop. So my local comic book shop here in Halifax, Nova Scotia is Strange Adventures. So I have issue 1 of Godzilla King of Monsters with Godzilla's foot crushing Strange Adventures comic book shop with artwork by Matt Frank, the very guy that did this Yongary artwork. So yeah, very, very cool. And then inside there was a bunch of extra pieces in there. So yeah, a very cool set, and it surprised me with just how large it was. So anyway, I got that set, and I was waiting for the order to be fulfilled. I put in my pre-order months ago, and then it was just a bit of a waiting game. And in fact, my buddy Chad, who is often my co-host on this channel, we sat down to do a video about 2 weeks ago, and it was kind of a mishmash video where we were just kind of showing random things. There was no real theme. And I thought, well, I don't usually do videos for just one toy, so I might as well put Yongary into this video. So I sat down with Chad, and I kind of did a whole preamble about buying this toy from Titanic Creations. but I cut it out of the episode because while I was editing that video, another toy that I had pre-ordered from Titanic Creations showed up. So this was from another movie. This is from North Korea, and there's an interesting story behind this movie. So this movie is called Pulgasari, and the box here, much more reasonably sized, but there is some nice artwork by Matt Frank again on the front. Very, very cool. And I've got this one open as well, so I've taken the toy out of there. But yeah, the backstory of this movie is, I guess, the North Koreans kidnapped, I want to say, a Japanese movie director, and they basically forced him to make their own version of a Godzilla movie, essentially at gunpoint. It's a pretty wild story. But anyway, I did watch Pulgasari. I was able to find the full film. I can't remember if I just watched it on YouTube or if I found it on one of the streaming services, but I enjoyed it too. Not as much as Gorgo and stuff, but it was still a pretty decent movie. And it's a cool looking creature. And I like that he's a little different. He's not a bipedal lizard. He's a little more like demonic looking. He looks kind of like maybe a minotaur or something. So pretty cool. So I've got both of these figures. So this one showed up while I was editing the last video. And I thought, maybe I'll just do a video with these two figures together. And I'll just lop it out of the video I did with Chad. So yeah, that's what this episode is. So we're going to take a closer look at both Yongary and Pulgasari. We'll bring in Gorgo for some comparisons. And anyway, they're really cool figures. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you maybe go to Titanic Creations website and order a couple for yourself, because I think they are very cool toys. So anyway, without further ado, let's flip things around and take a closer look at them. Okay, so here is Yongary out of the packaging. So you can see he's very like dinosaur-like, very Godzilla-esque on his two hind legs. He's got the fins down his back. He breathes fire, similar to Godzilla. So yeah, pretty cool. Now, I really do like this guy's design. He does kind of remind me of like the old rubber dinosaurs I had from companies like Imperial when I was a kid. He's got that kind of like blank look in his eyes, and anyway, it makes me very, very nostalgic. Even though I have no childhood attachment to this character, he just looks like those old dinosaurs. In the old books when they used to draw T-Rexes dragging their tails kind of behind them. It was, that pre-Jurassic Park era. But yeah, I think it looks really cool. So you can see here he does have a flame effect. Now in the movie, now this comes out, and there is like a very obvious kind of hole there in his mouth, and that was seen in the movie. You could see basically the flamethrower poking out of his mouth, which was kind of funny looking, but I kind of like that they included it here. So he's got an articulated jaw. You can see his lots of articulation. Moves at the head quite well, and he moves at the neck. His arms, you can see he's got ball joints at the wrist, the elbow, the shoulder. He's got this kind of mid-body swivel here. Then his legs, he's got multiple points of articulation, again, the knees and the thighs and the feet. His tail's got multiple points of articulation. So you can move that a lot of different ways. Now, it's still kind of limited. You can't swing it entirely. Like, to the side from here, there's not a whole lot of movement. But down here, it moves around quite a bit. Anyway, so yeah, he moves well. He feels good. Some of Gorgo's joints were a little loose, and I think that's better here with Yongary. It's a fun design. It'll fit in nicely with my other kaijus in my collection, and yeah, just very, very cool. In fact, why don't I bring in Gorgo, or technically Agra, here, and we'll do a little comparison. So you can see Yongary is bigger, but they do look good together. I don't know if they're to scale, but it works. They look like they could inhabit the same universe here. Now, speaking of the universe, let's inhabit their world a little bit with all the accessories that Yongary came with, because he came with some pretty cool stuff. So first one, I'll start with this small one that hopefully I don't lose. But this is a horn for his nose. that you can pop out the horn with the laser attached to it if you want to give him his normal nose, because the laser isn't firing constantly, obviously. So you have the option to change that out. You can see my laser has gotten a little warped. I think just the weight of it is kind of forcing it to bend down a little bit. But, what are you going to do? Anyway, so cool stuff that he came with here. So first off, I'll show you. He came with a bit of road. It's just a small little piece of road. And then he came with these 4 posable wires. And at the ends of those, you've got 3 airplanes and 1 helicopter. So you can fly these things around him and have him in battle. So yeah, if you want to have the plane swoop down here, you can do that. So yeah, these guys, it's very cool how easily it is to pose these planes however you want. Now, these wires, I will say, they don't plug into the vehicles very firmly. It just kind of rests. Oops. Just kind of rests on there. So yeah, it's not a... And now everything's starting to fall over on me. So like it does work okay when it's just kind of sitting stationary on your shelf. But if you start moving it around too much, fidgeting with it, like these wires don't really lock into place very well. But still, it's a pretty cool accessory. And even without the wires and the road, it's just cool to have the little helicopters and the little planes. Anyway, the blades don't spin on this, by the way. But yeah, so there you go. So you get some road with some jets and helicopter. Then we get these pieces, which don't work as well as I wish they did. I'm going to get rid of Gorgo here for a second. So, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't actually see the full movie of Yongary, so I don't know. I assume there's a specific scene where he knocks over a bridge or something. So you've got these 3 pieces to this bridge. And, they've got some sculpted detail of some, like, kind of brick in there. There's no paint apps. But then you get these 2 pieces of bridge. Now, these are pretty cool because you can see the detail in there. Like, they've actually sculpted, like, there's a kind of a train track down one side of the road, and then there's the lines for the different lanes. Like, it's a nice little piece. Now, I kind of wish these snapped in place so you could kind of keep it together as something sturdy, and then you could probably have Yongary knock it over if you wanted to. As far as I can tell, these are just meant to sit on here like so. So it's not very sturdy at all. And then you've got to take the other piece here and you connect it like that. So I think that's the intent. And then Yongary can come along and just bash it over. But I also don't like the thought, if I want to keep this bridge on my shelf as part of a diorama, that if I, accidentally bump my bookshelf, then this whole bridge comes tumbling down. So it would be nice if it was, it kind of snapped together with a little more, it was a little more sturdy. Anyway, then another thing he came with is 3 of these, like, oil tankers, which I guess are supposed to be from a distillery or a gasoline plant, whatever you want to call it. So there's 3 of these big towers. Now, these take up quite a bit of space. And again, I'm pretty sure these are from a specific scene in the movie. I think I've seen screenshots of Yongary kind of stomping past these things. So these are hollow. The lids come off like so. So yeah, there's not a whole lot of weight to them, but they do really fill up a display. They're pretty large. So that's pretty cool. Definitely add some value to the set. And then the coolest piece, I think, again, I'm not familiar with this building. I'm going to assume it's probably a specific building, like maybe the equivalent of the White House or something. But we've got this temple, and you can see all the different, like, paint apps on there. Looks like those little bushes maybe in the front, and the fence, and stairs up the side, and more sculpted on the back. So you get this, like, large building here. And so yeah, that's very cool. Now, this doesn't have any sort of destructible features. Again, I don't know what happens in the movie. I don't know if Yongary just walks past this thing, or maybe he knocks the roof off. But this thing here is not destructible in any way, as far as I can tell. But it is just a nice piece. It's cool to have buildings to scale with your kaiju. It just really fills out the world. And yeah, I think it's very, very cool. I like this a lot. Now, I was just about to move on to Pulgasari when I forgot to mention that this set also includes 3 little tanks. So I think they're all identical, and there's no movement. I don't think like the turret of the tank doesn't turn, the treads don't turn. They're just kind of solid pieces of green plastic with a little star painted on them. But again, it's always fun to get little accessories like this to pair up with your kaiju. These guys will look good next to Yongary or next to Godzilla or next to whoever. So next up, we'll take a look at Pulgasari, and I haven't handled this guy myself at all yet. I did pull the tray out of the box, but I haven't taken the figure out of the tray. So this is literally my first time handling him right now. And he feels pretty good. And he looks pretty good. Now, if you are by any chance familiar with this character, you might think, well, those aren't the right colors. Now, this figure was available in 3 different paint schemes, and I think maybe there's going to be 4 in total. When the pre-order was announced, initially it was in a darker color scheme with like a solid kind of brown or black plastic with kind of like silvery highlights, I believe. And he said, if I reach my funding goal, because if he didn't even hit his basic funding goal, he wasn't going to go through the trouble of paying for the mold for this thing and everything. But if he hit that funding goal, he had announced that he was going to do 3 or 4 different colorways, and he gave us a preview of what he was intending to do. Now, one of the ones that he said that he was going to do was this translucent red one with gold metallic highlights. So this guy is painted in metallic, or he's got that metallic paint, but he's translucent, so it's like see-through red plastic. So if I shine a light behind him here, you can kind of see how the light shines right through him. So yeah, I thought this was very cool. And because I have no attachment to this character, I wasn't, bent out of shape about like, oh, well, you got to have the original that's accurate to the film, because I didn't really care. I just thought if I'm going to add another creature to my shelf, I'd rather have the most interesting looking one, and I thought this looked very cool. So fortunately, he did surpass the numbers he needed. I think it was like, I don't know, 150 of the original one that he wanted to sell, and he reached that number. Now, if he was struggling at like the 100 mark and he said, if I don't get 50 more people, I guess I'm not going to do Pulgasari, then I would have went ahead and I would have pledged my money to get the standard one. But I'm glad that enough other people wanted the darker colors so that I could wait it out until he did the run of the red clear one. And he did it at the same time as the original colors. So it's not like I had to wait several more months afterwards, where when he did the Gorgo, he did the initial movie colors first, and then he had to do a whole nother run of it, so it was months later when you finally got the comic book color one. But this here, I could have had 2 Pulgasaris in my hand at the same time if I had wanted to. But even though the other color schemes look good, I just don't know enough about this character. I don't care enough about him to bother collecting all the different colors. Plus, these figures, I think they're worth it, but they're not cheap, and I just can't be spending all that money on these things. But yeah, here's his head. So it is very demonic looking, very cool. Got an articulated jaw, good range of motion on the neck. So yeah, he's got single jointed elbows, turns at the wrist. He does have a midway or a mid torso swivel there. Moves at the hips, the knees, the ankles, all the standard stuff you'd expect. And then his tail, he's just got that kind of a cute little tail here, and it's got an articulation, just one seam for the articulation there. So yeah, very cool. So we can see how these guys size up to one another. Might as well bring Agra back in here. And hey, why don't we bring in Gorgo too? So there you go. You can see how the whole gang looks together. Very, very cool. And now let's take a look at the stuff that Pulgasari came with, because he came with some pretty cool stuff as well. So first off, he came with a stretch of road. So just a little stretch there. We'll tip this down a little bit. And then he came with 2 buildings. Now these are very cool buildings. I have a couple other little plastic buildings that came with my like Pacific Rim figures from McFarlane Toys, but they don't have any paint detail and they're lacking sculpted detail. But this one here, I like that there is sculpted windows. There's some painted windows. There's sculpted door. Like it looks like a legit building. And I'm spoiling it. I was going to show you this after the fact, but you can see that there's some battle damage there, so you can snap that off, and then you can see the interior of the building. So you can display that. If you want it destroyed, you could like lay the rubble there beside it, or you could keep it as one solid piece. Very cool. And then the other building, this one's pretty impressive. So this has got a larger base, pretty tall building. Put that there. So you can see that would be like a full-on skyscraper with these guys. And it has, I think it's 2 or 3 points of destruction. So you can take this piece out. You've got that damage there. There's another piece here in the upper portion. There's just some little plugs that hold these in. There we go. And yeah, you can see there's another piece there. So there are 3 different pieces here that are removable. So you can, add some variety to how you want your battle damage to be. And I think that's very cool. These might be the best accessory we get out of the 2 packs. Even Big Ben would have been cool and everything, but I really like these buildings so you can build a city. You don't want a city that's just full of, landmarks. You want to have some buildings, just some typical standard buildings to destroy. These things don't look like they're specific to any one country or culture. So this could be, New York, or could be England or whatever. I don't know. But it looks very cool. Now he comes with some extra hands. So he's got 4 extra hands. So I currently have him with these kind of gripping hands. He's got solid fist, and then he's got it like a slightly more open hand, I guess. So I guess that's cool. And then he also comes with some train cars. So these are 3 trains. Now it looks like they might snap together. You got this one here. It's got the 2 little hooks, and that should plug in there, I'm guessing. Don't want to risk breaking anything. It's kind of soft plastic. So yeah, it's not plugging through that hole as easily as I'd like. But yeah, you can sort of see how that snaps together. And I honestly don't remember if there was a scene with a train, because I thought it was a little more... it wasn't that long ago that I watched Pulgasari, and it was kind of set in, I don't know what century, but it was pre-train, I'm pretty sure. It looked like kind of feudal Japan, or that era. I don't know, but that's cool. The train will work with other characters as well. Use it with Godzilla. And then the last accessory that Pulgasari comes with, which is pretty cool, is this little guy. So unlike Gorgo, so this is Gorgo, who's a baby, and that's his mother Agra. In Pulgasari starts off like this. He actually can fit in the palm of a little child's hand. It's like they wish him into existence, and then he eats metal. And the more metal he eats, he grows and grows and grows, and eventually he turns into this big giant kaiju, and he fights with the peasants to overthrow the evil emperor. And it was interesting. Like I said, not a bad movie. But this is super cute that you get the little baby version of Pulgasari. So yeah, very cool set, very cool figures. I'm very pleased with all of these. I think I like the Pulgasari set perhaps the best, just because these 2, not only do they kind of look like Godzilla, but they also kind of look like, a million other type of dinosaur characters that I've had in my collection over the years. Whereas this guy is just very original. Plus, I'm glad I held out for the red translucent version, because that's very unique as well. So yeah, very, very cool toys. Now maybe let's bring out some other figures for some comparisons. So here we have the 3 Titanic Creation characters, and I'm going to bring in a NECA version of Godzilla. So size-wise, I think he looks pretty good with any of these guys. So they all fit, within the same world. Now, I'm sure the scale isn't accurate. I think the Godzilla from the legendary movies would be substantially bigger than any of these guys, how they were presented in their own films. But if you're not a stickler for that sort of thing and you just want guys that look good on your shelf together, I think these guys display well with the NECA figures. It's not too crazy. And similarly, I've got a figure here from Playmates. And the Playmates figures are pretty much the scale with the NECA guys too. So these guys look fine in the same scale as well. Now the other main line of Godzillas that I collect are from Super 7. Here is one of Super 7's Ultimate Godzillas. Now you might think this guy's a little out of scale with these other ones. I probably wouldn't really want to display them together in a cohesive display like that. But if you want Godzilla to truly be the king of monsters and to kind of tower over the other guys, again, it's not too unrealistic. You could still see these guys fighting one another. And I think these buildings, they work pretty well with this Godzilla if you want to display them that way. So that looks pretty great. Now, I don't expect this scale to work, but if you want your Godzilla to not be the king of monsters, maybe be a little wimp, you could bring in one of the Super 7 reaction figures. And you can see now the other guys all tower over him. However, I still think this Godzilla works pretty well, depending on what era of Godzilla you want to represent with the buildings. Again, like some variations of Godzilla, he would tower over some buildings, but if you want him walking next to a huge building like the Empire State Building or something, maybe this scale does work for you. And I think it's pretty cool. In fact, I might end up displaying these buildings with my reaction figures just because I think I have a little more room with them to do so. So, yeah, there you go. I think that's pretty much all I have to say about these guys. But yeah, I am very pleased with all of them. Okay, so that was my review of my Titanic Creations, Pulgasari, and Yongary action figures. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave me comments below, and tell your friends about this channel, all that stuff. I appreciate all of it. I'll be back soon with another episode because I think Chad is coming over tomorrow night and we're going to shoot a couple of episodes. So stay tuned for those, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.